Good evening, everybody, and welcome to afternoon. Maybe we do have some people on the West Coast, Charlie. You might be right. Welcome to episode 3 of Talking Florida Rugby Occasionally. We're trying to make this an every Sunday thing, but I think, is it 2 Sundays we've got Father's Day, so we're not going to do an episode that day. And Turfer doesn't sound quite as good as T-Fro, Charlie. So this is the 3rd episode of Talking Florida Rugby Occasionally. My name is Ross Davenport, Florida referee assigner, occasional MLR broadcaster, water meter reader, baggage handler, whatever else, golf coach. I don't know what else. This is the next on in the line of jobs, but I don't get paid for this one yet. So, Charlie, how are we doing, my man?
We're doing fine. It looks like we have a sponsor, right? Because we have DeWalt.
We have these DeWalt rugby balls. Now, Charlie, whose rugby ball is that? Whose rugby ball was that originally? I just want to know, because I have one here. So clearly, these are either your balls or they're my balls.
This was gifted to me. This was gifted to me on one of your tournaments back in.
No, listen, Charlie Velasquez is with me, my esteemed producer, and obviously the master of rugbyfl.com, one of the best local rugby sites in the nation, if not the world. I shall say. He's my producer and host, and he'll be running the proceedings this evening. Thanks to all of you who joined us last weekend for our chats with Cam Dolan of NOLA Gold and Alex Tucci of Utah Warriors. Those are both available on the YouTube page. If you missed those live, you can go back and watch the replays of them. If you are watching live tonight, you can ask us questions via Facebook and or YouTube, whichever way you're watching. And Charlie will post them up for our guests this evening in episode 3, which will be the Whistleblowers of Florida, the current elite level whistleblowers that have come out of the state of Florida. We'll get to each of them individually. We have 4 of them joining us this evening from across the country. But before we get to that, Charlie, we're a week away from some live rugby, I think, or maybe 6 days, I think.
Yes, very exciting. I just want to say one thing about our guest today. One thing is that we are planning to have a little panel of referees maybe once a month. And you know, I think it's just so important for everybody to get to know the referees.
Agreed.
And of course, the best way is to talk to them after the game, because once you know, talking to the referees is the best way to learn your own mistakes and to understand what goes on with the referees when they do this, which is something that not everybody is brave enough to do. So,
no, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, the social part of rugby isn't as great in Florida as it is in other parts of the world. And I think the social aspect is where you can always get to chat to the ref over a couple of beers, talk about the game, you know, find out a little bit more about them. Listen, that'll help you as a coach and as a player to get to know these refs, and obviously vice versa, then to get to know you. And we don't always get the chance to do that too. I know I'm guilty of occasionally dipping out before the social. I've got kids, and you know, not every ref can hang around. But I think once we get to know some of these elite level refs, hopefully it'll encourage some of the young players out there that, you know, maybe disenfranchised with playing the game for whatever reason, or, you know, have dealt with a couple of injuries. Like, some will get into the stories of each of these individual refs and how they got into the game. You know, I started refereeing because I dealt with, you know, 4 concussions, and it was just kind of time to pick up the whistle. And funny, the story with some of these refs that got sort of thrown in the deep end when it was their first game. We'll get into that as well.
Okay,
Charlie, thanks as always for helping us.
We start bringing in.
We're going to bring them in the order they showed up, because as a referee, you should always be on time and be prepared. Which, of course, as we discussed, I think it was last week or the week before, that my last game I ref before the break, I forgot my referee bag. I was not prepared for that game, but I still got it done. I was there on time, just forgot my bag. So, joining us this evening.
Sorry.
Go on, Charlie. Our first ref joining us this evening is a current MLR ref. Grew up in Florida. Did not play the game of rugby. We'll get to that in a second. His story is an amazing one, a very rare one in the refereeing community, I would think. And that's Lex Weiner. Lex, how are we doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Ross and Charlie. It's good to see you guys, and looking forward to the rest of the podcast.
Thanks, mate. So tell us where you're joining us from. First of all, you're not based in Florida anymore, so tell us where you are and how you ended up there.
Yeah, so after going to the College of the University of Florida for 4 years, decided it would be beneficial to try something new and head up to New York City, and have been up here for just over 4 years now. So currently up here, and glad I could join you guys before curfew this evening. That starts in 25 minutes, so looking forward to the rest of the evening.
You're not going out tonight, are you? You're not going to venture out and do any protesting, are you? How far outside the town are you?
No, I'm actually in Manhattan myself. There's probably 2 protests going on within, a 3 or 4 mile radius of my apartment, but got all my activities out earlier today, so all good.
There you go. Now, yes, we talked a bit about your rugby history. So bring us back to Florida and, just your amazing story from never having played the game to where you are now as a referee of the professional league in America.
Yeah, sure. So fortunate enough for me, I actually was refereeing soccer in high school growing up to make some money for myself. And once I got to the University of Florida, who has a good rugby program and also a good rugby history from a referee perspective, where you'll see, Cisco, Kahlil, and Haylee as well have some ties there as well. I'm sure they'll talk about it, but was convinced into trying out something new by my mother and Ken Simmons, who's the club rugby coach currently at the University of Florida. And ever since I did that, and been a good road since. I think that was maybe 7 years ago at this point in time. And fortunately enough for me, being joined by Cisco here today, him and I shared the same L1 class too. So going full circle is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you obviously grew up here in South Florida. As I said, you played no rugby. Explain why that was the case and just how you were sort of introduced to rugby. I think you were introduced to rugby before you went up to UF, correct?
Yeah, sure. So I actually only have one kidney and a kidney disease, so I wasn't able to play any contact sports. So the only sports I really played were, soccer, volleyball, and basketball, and got introduced through refereeing when I was, growing up in South Florida for, I don't know, when I was maybe 14 or 15, we were just always around, and decided to, take up a new sport in refereeing rugby. And yeah, like you said, it's probably an atypical one for most referees' journeys, but I found that to be quite enjoyable and challenging, which is why we all do this. So it's been pretty fun.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get into more of your story in a little bit. Let's bring in our next esteemed guest here from Miami, Florida originally. He's back in Miami for now, but I know he's living now in Georgia. Cisco Lopez. Cisco, how we doing, my man?
Great to see everybody again. It's been a long time, and yeah, back in Miami right now for just a couple weeks. But good to see everybody.
The only non-Gator on this panel, I think, correct?
Yeah, I realized that as Lex was saying that he went to the University of Florida. I was like, wait a second. One of these doesn't fit in. So yeah, I went to the Florida International University for undergrad. And that's why I live up in Atlanta now, because I go to Emory University as a PhD student in the comparative literature program there. So
yeah, one thing you learn about these 4 individuals here, very smart individuals. One of these key parts of being a successful ref is having the smarts. Now, Cisco, your story, you did play a little bit of rugby, so talk about how you got into the game of rugby initially and then how you got into reffing.
Yeah, definitely. So my dad, you can see here on the left, Pancho, he was, he's always been into a bunch of different weird sports. Anybody that knows him knows that he's a pretty eclectic guy. And so I think like back in 2011, he looked up what youth rugby there might be in Miami, and he found out that there was a Miami rugby youth club. And so at first, just my brother was playing as under 14. It took me about a year to come around to coming out and playing. I'd never played a contact sport before. I'd never really played a sport before. And, I played in junior and senior year of high school with the Miami Rugby under-19 team under Coach Ronnie Suarez. Pancho was the strength and conditioning coach, and Charlie was a part of that group as well. I decided to. That's how I got introduced to rugby, through my dad, and it's really brought our family together in a cool way. Refereeing, actually, I kind of got injured in a training. I had a training injury, like sort of the first year that I was playing, and I didn't know anything about rugby at all. And so, because I'm the bookie kind of guy that I am, I just ended up, I ended up, you know what? I don't know anything about this game. I want to be a better player. I want to know what's going on. Let me go ahead, look at the law book. So, and that was before I even want to be a referee. Right. And then once I got into the law book situation and really learning stuff here and there, I refereed some practice scrimmages for the under-19s team. And I actually refereed my first game before I got certified as a referee. I refereed my brother's.
Roy Monk didn't hear that, right? Roy Monk.
Yeah, Roy Monk.
He was supposed to join us tonight, but he said he had something else going on, so he definitely didn't hear that. I promise.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably going out. You know, it's a big parties out lately. So
you're not the first one. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say. I mean.
Yeah. So I after refereeing that game, that was really, I refereed my brother for my first game, which was kind of cool. Had a lot of fun, way more fun than I thought. And I just figured, you know what, let me go ahead and get fully certified, referee here and there, same as Lex, just to make a couple extra bucks here and there. And, you know, kind of just really enjoyed it to the point where once I graduated high school, I considered playing for FIU's club team. And I had already gotten a couple of opportunities to travel to the Maryland, DC area to referee some pretty high level high school stuff. And I sort of thought to myself, no, listen, you don't weigh that much. You know, you probably would be a better. I think your future as a referee might be a little bit more bright, a little bit more longer lasting than as a player. And you know, so jumped all the way to the dark side. And I've never looked back since. So. Yeah,
we'll talk to you individually, but it always seems like there's that one sort of moment where it clicks. Like, this is something I really want to do. You said that was that trip to DC for you. That, you know, that's one of the things the Florida refs, well, refs in the United States and around the world get to do is these exchange trips. Where you know, in Florida may not have the similar youth tournament. Remember when I went out to Sacramento and refed at their kickoff tournament out there, and it was just, we didn't even have youth rugby here, and it was just an amazing experience for me. So we'll talk some more to Cisco in a minute, but next we're going to bring in Haylee Slaughter, our third referee. We can still call you a referee, right, Haylee?
Please do.
You just obviously came back from a trip to Ireland. I know, refereeing out there, and that was an amazing experience, which we'll get into a little later. But talk a bit about your introduction to rugby. I know it was at the collegiate level, and then how you got into refereeing.
So I was in an anatomy class, and my anatomy TA she had read a flyer saying, "Who said girls can't tackle?" Because I think one of the other graduate assistants was from Scotland or something, and I was like, I could tackle. So I went out for training, and it wasn't like, this is something I'm going to try out. This was like, this is what I'm doing now. And so, I don't know, I kind of like jumped in both feet playing. And then that kind of ended up being my approach to refereeing. So played here at Florida, and then I played for the Raleigh Venom. Won a championship, yes. And then I kind of bummed around for sevens and stuff. And then it was 2008, I ended up in Gainesville, and it was just too far to drive, try to be on a team. And
right.
Kerry O'Malley said, go take the ref course. It's just this weekend. So after a day with Terry Day and Jerry Fitzgerald, I said, oh, that's impressive. I've not seen that one. After a day with Terry and Jerry, I was like, I want to do it. I want to go all the way, whatever that means. Like, send me. I'll do it. And because I just really enjoy like tackling. Sorry, that sounds terrible. I really enjoy challenges. Okay, I just really enjoy kind of proving to myself that I can do what I set out to say I could do. So it's been really satisfying in that regard.
And what was your first match or tournament that you refereed? Do you remember?
It was like kind of touch, practice, a scrimmage sort of, and after some drills and stuff, it was very informal. It was over the summer, so someone was just like, "Who wants to ref it?" And yeah, so everyone waited and waited and waited and waited. I was like, I'll do it. Fine. I don't even think I had a whistle, but it went poor enough for me to want to improve. So that was important, to screw up something, to want to go back and do it better.
Awesome. I think I mentioned the first time I ever met you. Do you remember the first time I ever met you?
It was at the Todd Miller tournament.
It was at Todd Miller.
Yes.
And I was like, she's an interesting character. I was like, she's a perfect referee.
Hey, Haylee, do you remember when I met you?
I don't know, Charlie. I meet a lot of photographers.
Because I do remember I had just got into rugby here in Florida, and I went to see a night game between Miami and Brevard, I think. and you were the ref. And I was like, I had been out of rugby for like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And I was like, so what's going on? A woman refereeing. I was impressed. And I think you had just got out of something of USA Rugby because you had like a really nice USA Rugby thing like Cisco is wearing now. And you were like all proud because you had just become something. And I remember that one.
Good. That's a nice story. I've heard a lot of other stories about the way I met Haylee that aren't as nice as that. So no,
I just remember you told me the first thing you told me was you like to be referred to as Ugg. Now, not many people know that was your nickname back in the day.
Back in Raleigh,
now,
yes.
You've got past that now, graciously.
I don't mind it. I really don't mind it.
All right. Well, thanks, Haylee. Let's get to our fourth and final guest this evening, live from I think Utah, if I'm not correct. Kahlil Harrison, another Gator. There he is.
There he is.
Kahlil, how we doing? The man with the best beard in refereeing. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you.
The hair's. Well, we won't talk about the hair, but we'll give him the quarantine benefit of the doubt because of the situation we're in right now. But Kahlil, played in Florida. He went to the University of Florida and then refereed here for a while before heading out to Utah. So, Kahlil, tell us your story.
Well, I was playing basketball one day at the great University of Florida, Go Gators. And on the way back to our cars, I was with a couple of guys who happened to be on the rugby team. They invited me out to a practice. I went to that practice, and that was that. I was hooked. I was hooked on rugby.
So you played for 4 years at Florida. I know that was a pretty successful Gators team at the time, if I seem to remember.
Yeah, we went to the CRC. In 2012, we won the Challenger Cup when that was a thing. So yeah, we had our successes. Now, I was not very good, and I was very skinny too. My goodness, I was very good.
And you were a wing, I presume.
He's a prop. We talking about, Charlie?
I was a hooker. I mean, look at me.
So fast. Look at you.
Kerry O'Malley also encouraged me to take the referee course, and so I did. And I spent a lot of time ARing for the already great Haylee Slaughter at the time. Then when I finished school, I figured I would have a higher ceiling as a referee than as a player. And so I made the switch, and it's been a good choice ever since.
Awesome. Now, the first question I'm going to give to you, Kahlil, is: are you the fastest ref in this group?
I am the fastest ref currently speaking, yes.
We'll take that as a yes. All right, so another great story. So it's just interesting how the four of you came into rugby a little differently. Obviously, Kerry O'Malley had a big part in influence on three of you, or two or three of you, and we'll have her on next weekend, I think, on Sunday, as we delve into sort of the Florida Rugby Union side of things. But yeah, Kerry is a great rugby person, and we'll get to chat with her some more next week and maybe delve into how proud she is of all you guys for your referee accomplishments. All right, so let's go around the room here. Lex, obviously you've been doing some MLR stuff now this past season. What's been your most memorable match as a referee? The one that really sticks in your mind as being the most memorable in your career so far, and why?
That's a tough one, Ross. I think each match that we do each has good takeaways and memories from it. But I would say from this past year, I would have to say the last game I did between San Diego and Rooney was pretty good. And I would never thought after I, stepped off the field that day, we probably wouldn't be doing any rugby for, 6 to 8 months or maybe longer, right? Who knows? But, it's pretty cool refereeing in a stadium of, 4,000 packed people and, having a great team of three of support behind you and, it being a close and, fun game between, two of the top sides in the MLR. So, just from a memory perspective, just with everything that we're going through right now, it's just one that you could think about for the foreseeable future until we have some more rugby to play.
For sure, the last matches might be always the best one, right? Now let's talk about MLR. You and Haylee, of the four of you, the two that are focused mostly on the 15 side of things. Now, how does that come about as a referee? Is it sort of something that somebody tells you have to do, or does somebody come to you and say, what do you have the most fun doing, or how did that happen with you, and how did you end up on the MLR side of things?
I think all of us had a crack at 7s and 15s, and obviously depending on who you speak to, you can get different opinions on it. But for me, the sevens pathway was a great experience for me, where I got to, referee a lot of high quality games, work with a lot of great people, and then was presented the opportunity of, dipping my toe, deeper into the water for some 15 stuff by the current referee manager, Richard Every. And, ever since I dove, full feet in, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago at this point, it's always been, learning on a weekly basis, where each game, like I said, presents different challenges, opportunities. As, a younger referee in the competition, it's always, fun to see the growth of the competition getting better and better, right? Where, the players, expect more of us as referees, and the same with the coaching staff, as well as, they're in full-time environments, and they expect a lot of, quality from us as well. So it's important that the preparation is right. And I've, over the last, 2 or 3 years, have, learned quite some, and, looking forward to continuing on more and more.
Yeah, we'll get into more of the MLR stuff in a minute, but do you think your move to New York helped you quite a bit in regards to your refereeing progress? Because I know down in Florida, obviously our nearest MLR team is Rugby Atlanta. We don't have anything too much closer than that, maybe NOLA, but obviously up there, you've got New England, you've got New York. You've obviously got a ton of quality college rugby up there, which I know you've also ref.
Yeah, and I didn't move up to New York for the rugby side. It was just a very significant bonus, where MLR wasn't a thing when I first moved up there. Obviously, we have phenomenal sevens clubs, 15s clubs on both the men's and women's, for both colleges and even high schools as well. The amount of rugby we have up here, from let's call it 13 to 14 years old all the way to the MLR, is quite significant. Yeah. So pretty much every single weekend, whether it be over the summer when we have sevens, or when it's 15 season, you have the ability to challenge whatever level you want to referee at. So that was obviously a great learning thing for me, where you have teams from the USA Rugby landscape, like the Mystic Rivers, the Old Blues, the Nyax, that you get to referee every single weekend. And some of those players are obviously now playing in MLR and represent the national teams. But then even the guys who aren't at that level are still quality players as well. And just being able to referee them on a weekly basis has been incredible for me.
Awesome. Cisco, your most memorable match, or perhaps tournament? I know it's obviously you focus on the seven side of things at the moment. Give us your information.
Yeah. So I've gotten some pretty cool opportunities with the sevens. I will kind of like cheat and give two answers, because for sure one of the most memorable games that I was a part of was actually ARing for Haylee, with Kahlil as the other AR, a couple Rugger Fests ago, when the men's team played Alumni from Argentina.
I do remember. I think Charlie's got some clips of that.
Yeah, he's got some clips of that, and that was maybe the first very high level match of rugby that I was on the field for. And I mean, it was just one of those things where, if I was hooked on refereeing from how the challenge itself felt of just refereeing rugby, it was that game where I recognized the challenge of refereeing high level rugby, and how exciting pushing yourself to be able to meet that challenge was. So that's one of my favorite, especially like games in Florida that I got to be a part of. This is like legendary to me. This is like the craziest game that I got to be a part of. And then recently, this past year, I had the really cool opportunity to be a part of the referee team for the World Rugby Challenger 7 series that was down in Chile and Uruguay. And on the Uruguay stop, the second stop, I was able to do the third place match between Hong Kong and Germany, I believe. And it was a stadium in Montevideo, and it was super full. They were getting ready to watch Uruguay play and the final. And so everybody was packed into the stadium, and the atmosphere was just unlike anything that I had experienced, alongside the high level of international rugby that was there. So it was just, I was buzzing all the way through, from before up until 5 minutes after the final whistle.
Yeah, those Uruguayans, people don't often realize they love their rugby just as much as they love their soccer. Now, looking at the clips of that alumni game, I'm sure all of you sort of remember these key Florida matches that, we don't get big matches in Florida that often. And this was one of those ones when Ruggerfest, I think probably one of the last years that it was really a factor on the national scene, and we got live to come down. I know USA South's been down a couple of times, and we had alumni come up, and these kind of opportunities for you guys, hopefully we can get it to, get Ruggerfest, back on track again, and get some of these games happening again, because this game, and obviously USA Chile and the World Cup qualifiers we've had here all seem to stick in everybody's mind, because they don't happen so often. Haylee, I know you sent me some of your answers before, but obviously I'm the only one that's read those. So let's talk about your most memorable match. This obviously has to be one of them, I would think, just because of the quality of rugby that was played.
Yeah, it's way up there for sure. That game, I feel like it just earned me a lot of respect, and it's amazing. Like, players who hated me for years and years after that game, like,
No.
apologize for me.
Listen, we're refs. There's somebody out there that hates all of us. So.
Oh, of course. But no. That was a great game, and being supported by Kahlil and Cisco was a big part of it. But really, well, that one, and I have three answers.
Yeah, go ahead. You got time.
Chicago Lions came down to play live in 2013, and like my nose was broken for me about 6 weeks prior to that, and back then you had to get 3 above grade evaluations in a row, so
right.
That was my game, and it was 68-3, and a lot of Eagle players they had there were playing in that one, so that felt really good. Just I remember Seeger Swanson was one of my ARs. He and Bob Toomey AR'd for me that match, and he was so excited for me in the locker room after that. Like, I kind of didn't really get it. So he was like, "This is such a stepping stone in your career," and he was just really excited for me because I did well in the Paul Rosenzweig was my evaluator, and all that went really well. But really, like, the game that sticks out the most was the national final I did with one ACL. So that's the kind of thing where hopefully no one ever does that again. Hey, my doctors told me I was fine. I think if I were male, they would have ordered an MRI, but they were like, "Oh, you're passing all the squat and twist tests, and I could do all this mobility stuff." And I was like, "But I can't do a pistol squat." And they're like, "Oh, nobody could do pistol squats." So, but they were like, "Oh, no, you're fine, you're fine." So I rested the weekend before. I didn't do college 7. And then I went out there, and I just had this belief, and the game, it really, like, it went fine. Like, I had one moment of instability when I was, like, decelerating to award a try, but the players didn't notice. The only people noticing were people watching who knew me. So after the game, actually, like, Dana Teagarden was in the crowd, and she's the reason why I decided to really, really be high performing. And then later she sent me an email saying, "Don't you ever rep injure again." So, I mean, it didn't hurt the game, but it could have. So,
but it made it memorable that you made it through that game. Obviously, there's one other one of you here that had to deal with a torn ACL, Cisco. We also talked to Alex Tucci last Sunday, who tore his ACL, and I only found out last Sunday that he also did it playing touch. So those of you out there, stay away from touch rugby, okay? You tear your ACL doing that. You tear your ACL like Haylee did, actually repping on a proper. We'd assume she did it doing a proper game. I don't think Haylee plays much touch, but stay away from touch rugby. It's bad, okay? Haylee, thanks. Kahlil, last but not least, let's talk about your most memorable game or perhaps tournament. I know you're focused on the 7 side of things as well, just like Cisco.
So that 15s game with Haylee, just to dovetail on the two of them, was one of the few games that I've ever been a part of where I thought to myself, I'm glad it wasn't me in the middle. That game really taught me that whatever I had been experiencing was not anything close to what I could be experiencing on the rugby field. My most memorable 7s match was in 2017 at Club 7's championship. It was my first national final. It was Denver and Utah. Utah was going for the repeat, and Denver was up with a minute to go, less than a minute to go. All they had to do was hold on to the ball, and they would have won. But nope. Maximo kicks it to the most dangerous man on the field. He shakes 2 guys, pass, run, try. It was just elation on one side, absolute devastation on the other side. It was amazing.
Now talk about
while
I've got you here. Now talk about the difference between reffing 7s and 15s, and obviously you've done both, as have all of you. But what do you feel the difference is between the two, and what you have to bring to the game, especially?
For me, 15s is much more of a story in that it starts out really intensely and then it moves up and down throughout the 80 minutes. And so you have to be able to kind of read the room, and try to manipulate the players while not being too manipulated by the players
Right.
for those 80 minutes to try and give the crowd and everyone involved a good product, where a single game of sevens is just intensity front to back with no up and down. It's just forward. And you just kind of leave it all out there for those 14 minutes. Over the course of a sevens tournament, though, things become more and more intense as the weekend goes on, and in that way you kind of have to adapt.
For sure.
But it's just, I would say mainly it's the intensity. There's really very little walking and resting in a game of sevens as opposed to a game of 15s. As far as what I can bring to it, I think, or from what I've been told by players, they appreciate someone who can be there with them. All four of us, I'm sure, have heard some version of it's nice to have someone there to call the calls, to make the calls.
Yes. Not from halfway. So, I understand.
Right, exactly. So I bring that to it. I preferred sevens when I played to 15, so I think that helps me empathize more with the players. And then when you've been doing it as long as the four of us have been doing it, the players eventually get to know you. So even if you have a bad game or a bad tournament, you've built up enough cachet with them that it's more forgiving on their part. It's good. I've retired from sevens, by the way. 2019 was my last year of sevens.
We're breaking news here?
Good for you.
Well, yeah, probably to most people, yeah. We haven't had much rugby in 2020, so.
Right, so yeah. What's the plan? What's the plan going forward for Kahlil Harrison then?
I made the switch over to 15s. We have an MLR team here in Salt Lake City.
You do? So
I'm trying to get more with that. I traveled down to New Orleans for the first time this past 2-month season, to AR for them. That was a ton of fun, so trying to get more into that. We have a few D1A teams here in Utah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be like Haylee. I'm gonna have to put a poster up of her back there, so I know how to keep it aspirational.
I can send you a picture if you want.
I appreciate that, Charlie.
I have pictures. So.
Well, Charlie, Ronnie Suarez can tell you something. That man has a rugby wall that I've never seen in my life. He has way too much stuff, and I'm sure a ton of stuff sitting in his garage that he could send you to put on that wall at the back as well. All right, let's go back to Lex. I'm going to sort of go around here and ask some different questions. Lex, now, obviously, you're at the highest level now professionally in the USA. What's the hardest part to manage at the MLR level, maybe perhaps compared to, say the college level, which you've obviously done some high-level college stuff as well?
Like I said before, I think every single game presents a different type of challenge that you'll have to prepare for and manage throughout the game. So, if you take two teams, right, that, are very good, at scrummaging, you have to really prepare for it. That's probably going to be your hardest output of the game, where you'll have to spend more and more time from a mental perspective managing that. Whereas, let's say at the breakdown, if you don't have two teams, you just want to compete and jackal the whole entire time. If you sort of the breakdown early in the game, it's something that could be quite free flowing and easy for you to referee. You don't have to manage that much. But if you don't get it right early on, it could go down the other path where you're just over managing, and then it becomes stressful for you, stressful for the players, and the output for the spectators and the coaches and everyone who's watching isn't as good. So it really depends, game to game. But I think, scrum time just adds a, added emphasis because it's just everyone's focusing on that one specific thing. So you really have to, take time to manage scrum by scrum, sometimes player by player. And then fortunately enough for us, in the MLR, we have, teams of 3 with radio. So getting input throughout the game from the other ARs that you're working with is always, quite beneficial to help manage the scrum.
Do you find at that level the mental part or the physical part is the most difficult? Because obviously the speed. Which part do you find the hardest? The mental. Obviously, everybody, the 4 of you are all in great shape, but still, pushing yourself to that extra professional level takes a little bit more. But or is the mental side of things?
Yeah, I think the mental side of things is definitely the more challenging thing, because throughout an 80-minute game, you have over 150 to 200 breakdowns a game where you have to think about how to manage 30 players on the field. And when the substitutions come on, how do you manage them? The prep that goes up to the whole entire game, which completely could be, washed away depending how the game turns out or doesn't turn out. And like you said before, we're all in decent enough shape. And, luckily for us, we're held to high standards at the professional level. And, other people as well have to, take fitness tests. So we already have that standard of the physical side of the game. And obviously, it's something they have to keep on working on throughout the season and during the preseason as well. But, I'm sure that all of us and every single referee can, attest to, sitting in the changing room or sitting on, in the car ride home or the flight home after a game and just absolutely mentally drained. And, waking up that next morning and just like, whoa, time to relax for, a day, because you just have to recover from it. And obviously the physical side of things easier to recover from depending on how challenging the game was. And we could, watch film for, hours upon hours from, our respective games, but you have to learn from the mistakes you made and just move on from there. So definitely the long-winded answer of saying the mental side of it for sure.
Yeah, no, especially for those 80 minutes. And obviously the sevens tournament, you've got 14-minute games, but you're doing, sometimes I know those that do the sevens are doing 4 to 5 games perhaps in a day. And it certainly can drain on you, I think, in a different way. Cisco, let's talk to you. There's been obviously some talk with this quarantine thing about potential law changes, some of which have been met with some ridicule, regarding the scrums and things like that. But is there any part of the law that you would want to change if you could, perhaps?
I don't know. I think it's a really good question, right? Because I think what's so good about our game is that so many people are open to, and the governing body is so open to, testing things out here and there to keep up with the style of play that most coaches are experimenting with, both at the international level and like a more local grassroots level. I honestly, I've like mulled over this question for a long time, and I really don't know. I think that's a really good question, and I think a part of that as well is just like, I think a part of that as well is just that, again, those law changes and those law trials are always in accord with whatever is like sort of the most cutting edge or whatever coaches are really pushing. And so sometimes it makes me realize like so much more of my responsibility or my headspace in a game of rugby isn't at that tactical level. It's more of like the law and making sure that whatever tactics the team use are within the sort of frame that the law gives them. And if they take an unfair advantage, then that's obviously like a flag for us to talk about. And that's what a lot of our referee society meetings are, or our webinar meetings in the off season or between competitive weeks like we were having with UNA and MLR. So I mean, I don't have an answer because I think I just don't think at that tactical level still maybe. And but this is something that like I've thought about in terms of how can I become a better referee, or like what are some other conversations that we can have as referees together. And it's really this thing of like, what's one of the things that teams do that you think is unfair that you should be able to kind of like pull them back on? I don't know. For me right now, I feel like the laws are pretty good. I think one of the better law changes from the past couple of years was the tackler having to come through the gate as well.
Yes.
So before in law, the tackler didn't have to approach the ball from their side of the goal line, right?
Right.
And yeah, so before, like, that created a huge mess, right? That was a mess, and it was an extra thing that we had to remember and process. That was so quick, like, because the tackle ruck happens so instantaneously, and like 3 things happen at once, and you have to sort of know what you're looking for before it even happens to get the right call. And that was one of those where I remembered how little mental fatigue I had, or how much more I was able to contribute my like mental awareness to other things going on in the game because the tackle became that much more simplified.
Yeah, it was just one little change, didn't it? But made a big difference to us referees. Haylee, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm also going to throw in there a podcast I listen to, which is Egg Chasers out of the UK. They focus on obviously on Premier League and top 14, etc. But one of the things they talk, obviously there's a lot of time to talk about different things over the last few months. And one of the laws they thought about getting rid of was the knock on. And unless it really benefited the team with the ball, that if they knocked it on, you picked it up, no advantage, play on, let's go. But are there any other sort of laws that you would change? And what are your thoughts on perhaps getting rid of the knock on as one less thing for us to think about, unless it benefits the infringing team?
You're asking me?
Yes, you're up next.
Oh, it's funny. I think that's I don't like that knock-on thing. And
that's why we're here to discuss things.
Here's my counterpoint to what Cisco said. I actually would like to bring back tacklers' rights. Okay, so it was harder to referee, but every breakdown was more of a contest, and defenders were able to kind of show that athleticism and skill that just doesn't happen in any other aspect of the game. They have to be so quick. And so it was a little bit harder, but it was still amazing when they were able to pop right back up and have that steal, and all the game just turns on a dime, But maybe I just resent it because it was Eddie Jones's idea, but but no, I mean, it's cool that we have a game that evolves, that wants to get better for player welfare, that wants to make the game more entertaining. I think it's neat that we kind of mess with a lot of laws here and there to make it more exciting, and I don't know, rugby's just cool.
Well, let's
Ross, can I throw one in?
Sure, of course, mate. Go ahead, Charlie.
I'm not a ref, okay, but this is what one law that I think that is sort of really unfair, which is to give a penalty at a scrum whenever things go bad. And why? Because teams, they get penalties from a scrum, which is caused by a minor infringement, and now they have 3 points. And
let's ask Haylee about that. As Haylee and Lex are 215 sort of experts here. How do you deal with the scrum? And obviously none of you are forwards by trade, so I know
type 5.
Well, front rows by trade, I should say.
Fine.
Front rows by trade, where the real dark arts happen. How do you, as a referee, really try to balance out the infringements at the ruck and really reward the dominant team without being too crazy about it?
Right. Well, I mean, it's just sort of a feeling. You can get an idea of momentum building, and we've decided kind of here in the States that we support attacking rugby. That's what's fun, and I mean the laws support attacking rugby, really.
Sure.
I just think that what was the question again?
Just about dealing with the scrum. And,
okay.
Charlie feels. I think a lot of us feel that sort of a lot of referees tend to guess perhaps at scrums where there isn't one dominant scrum where it's a lot easier to give a penalty away. We obviously saw at the World Cup final, which I've forgotten about already, that South Africa was rewarded for their dominance in the scrum, but there's certain games where the scrum is going down, but nobody knows who, and referees tend to guess. So how does a referee manage a 15 scrum to the best ability, shall we say, maybe?
Oh, well, it's all really about the setup. I mean, we'll hammer that home, but every time anyone asks us about, if you get the setup right, if you get bodies and forces and everything aligned and everyone bound properly, if you set it up right, you're more likely to have good scrums. And if you're really strict early on in the game, and this was something they really hammered me on in Munster, they're like, don't screw around with these, don't resets. They're like, just free kick them and get out of there, just set your standard. They're here to learn just as much. So if that guy engaged early, then free kick it. So sorting it out early on in the game, you can generally tell by the way they set up. And then after the ball comes in, it's a good thing to take note of what happens when, say, green puts the ball in and then when white puts the ball in. So
for sure,
if things go all haywire when green puts the ball in, well, then maybe white's maybe not doing something great, and either way around. But then on green's put in, the scrum looks like a beautiful tabletop, right? So these are things that you just kind of figure out during the game, and then from there, it's just depending on how the scrummaging is going, you may play a longer or shorter advantage. Like, there's ways to finesse it, and just some people say scrums are boring, but if you take the scrum out of the game, then you're taking my heart out of my chest. So don't do that.
No, for sure.
Right.
This is a good question for Kahlil, because obviously Kahlil mentioned he's making that transition, from 7s to 15s. Now, Kahlil, obviously at 7s, the idea in the scrum is just get the ball in and get it out of there as quickly as you can without anything too ridiculous happening. But how are you going to approach the change here for you in regards from 7s to 15s on the scrum? And is there anything that you perhaps would change law-wise? Maybe talk about 7s. Is there anything on the 7? Obviously, 7s laws differ a little bit from 15s, but is there anything on the 7 circuit you would change? And again, just how are you looking forward to dealing with 15 scrums after dealing with 7s for so long?
So for scrums, I think we all have our keys, things that we look for, and if we find that one thing, then we make our decisions based on that. So I would do something similar 4:15. So, make sure you have the setup right. And if, say, the defending loose head is in a funky position, if it goes down in a way that suggests it was his or her fault, then, ping him or her. But that's what I would do in sevens as well. Though in sevens, it seems like it's always the loose head's fault, no matter what. And then as far as law changes go, whatever makes my life easier, I'm happy with. Similar to Cisco, I don't really think about the game in that way, because as a referee, I just kind of hold the law and apply it to the game. I don't have to figure out the X's and O's of the game. So if it makes my life easier, I'm all about it. Having the tackler have to come through the gate was one less person for me to worry about. Having the one-man ruck was
thank England for that,
one less thing for me to worry about. So I am all about the changes.
Eddie was blaming Eddie Jones for something earlier, but don't forget England were the ones that resulted in this one-man ruck. So thank them for that. Let's go back to Lex real quick here. Lex, let's talk about, we'll have a question about scrums real quick before I get to the other question. You obviously referee a ton of college 15s as well as the MLR 15s. How different do you approach refereeing scrums at the college level, where you might have guys that, are scrumming for the first year ever, or brand new, haven't been taught particularly well, versus MLR scrums where you've got international players that have had elite coaching for a number of years? How do you approach scrums between those two, between the college and the pros?
I think pretty similarly, actually, where going off what Haylee said, getting the setup is very key, and it starts before the game when you're talking to the front rows in the changing room, or before they start warming up, right? Where if you give them very clear direction, whether it be at the college level or at the professional level, they can at least understand what they have to do and what they can't do to get penalized, right? So if you get, depending on whatever level it may be, if you set a very clear structure of what you're expecting of them as a front row, then you can go to tailor how you're going to manage the game throughout that period and how you would communicate to the players depending on who they are, what their skill level is, obviously, because very differing skill level from, first year college player to potential international prop, and how you'd want to communicate that with them and how they would potentially receive that information, because they might not want to hear it from me, or they'll hear it from me and apply that very well. And then you could have a good scrummage, throughout the game, which is really important. But communication is vital to any success of having a good day at the office with the scrums.
Now let's talk about, I'm sure some people are watching today or they're going to watch later on replay that, are thinking about getting into refereeing, and talk about some of the experiences you've gone through, Lex, and how you would sell refereeing to somebody that perhaps, is finding themselves frustrated at the playing of the game, and what this refereeing opportunity has brought to you.
I wouldn't even sell it to just players, to be honest. I think I'm, a pretty good advocate of, you don't have to play to make sure that you could even try and referee, obviously.
For sure.
So everything that players feel and the team atmosphere feels, and that whole type of group think that you get from playing is the same within refereeing.
Yes.
And we do have this term that I forgot who used earlier, jumping to the dark side. It's not a dark side. I don't know why people use that term. It's not a bad thing to be a referee. And I think once you get within the refereeing environment, you have the same type of, referee socials, referee conference calls, traveling as a team, seeing people, throughout the United States that you might only see 2 or 3 times, that you've started to see more and more throughout, tournaments, matches, whatever it may be. And, it's such an easy sell when I talk to people. Obviously, it's very daunting to be the one person in charge of, 30 individuals or 14 individuals, depending if you're doing 7s or 15s. But it's very rewarding in the sense that, for me personally, like, I've developed a whole new friend group and professional group from the rugby I've done over the last 6 or 7 years. And it's obviously very challenging because you're, pushing, to, get better games, get better matches, be part of better competitions. But at the end of the day, I can call everybody in this chat here, a friend. And I think that's, really important because, once the tournament's over, or even, during the tournament, you're supporting those individuals like you would your teammates. And after the games are over, you could, see how, they did, get their, point of view, and then also have a pint or two afterward, just like everybody else does.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even you guys are at the elite level, and it's still it's still a team sport, whether it's the referee team or the players. I mean, I've been to, Vegas a couple of times, and I end up reffing U14s girls, but even when I come back to the tent, everybody has something great to share about the game. And they're from Florida to California to Texas, New York. There's so many different unions out there, and getting to see everybody and being part of that team. You're going out and just helping out.
For sure.
Cisco,
and the type of people that you get to meet also, not even just from a refereeing perspective, but the relationships you develop with the players and the coaches and the staff, those are ones I haven't even spoke about as well, where you're traveling with these players and teams as well, that you're staying at the same hotel with them, you're at the pitch with them before the game and after the game, and you get to know them and develop those relationships off the field, also turn into better working relationships on the field as well, which goes a significantly long way, I think, especially when you're dealing with people who have X amount of caps or have been within a professional setup for quite some time. If you have a good relationship with them off the field, it works wonders usually. Not always.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and listen, any top-level player that knows what a referee is going through, and he only knows that from talking to you off the field, as you said,
sure,
knows that we're all going to make mistakes. They're going to knock the ball on. They're going to throw the ball forward. We're going to miss a call now and again, and they're just trying to get the best out of this game that we can. Cisco, talk about some of your experiences. I know you've been out to. Did you go to Dubai? I know some of you have been out there. I mean, that's one of those awesome experiences that I always see your dad posting pictures of you from the airport. And I always remind these young up and coming refs that look, you're traveling across the world on somebody else's dime, and being able to experience these amazing tournaments.
Yeah. I mean, for me, going to DC, DC, Maryland was, one of the things that clicked for me of oh, wow, I can actually not just, and to Lex's point as well, meet other people, but I get to go and see places that I might not have been able to go see without this. Right. And, I've had the amazing opportunity. I've been to Dubai. I was in Chile and Uruguay, like I said earlier, for the Challenger Series. But I've been able to go to parts of the United States that, are not easy to get to when you're, from Miami, which is the furthest corner of the US. a lot of flights to normal places are pretty expensive, and to be able to travel to a really cool place like Vegas was such a fun experience. A lot of the time I've been out there a couple times for the series stop, and it was not just being able to be in Vegas, but then again, like we're saying, you're there with these people. You're there with the group and some newbies, and it's always got such a fun vibe of camaraderie, which is kind of why you even get into rugby in the first place, and what makes as much as and a couple of us have said this already, why we get pulled into refereeing is because we enjoy the challenge. It's almost like an impossible task, right? You want to have that perfect game, and you're kind of always chasing, how could I do better? How could I fix? How can I anticipate stuff? But then at the same time, it's the whole culture of rugby, you still get to live through that in refereeing. Dude. And you get different personalities as well, right? Because the kind of personality that can become a referee or would become a referee, it is a kind of a little bit of a personality that you don't find in a lot of others of spaces in life, not even in rugby. And you find kindred spirits that, you see them two times a year, 3 times a year. And yet, if you call them on the phone, they will pick up. If you text them, they will answer. You call them a friend, but even if you only see them 2 times a year, so yeah. And I mean, going to the Challenger Series, I mean, now I have friends that live, in Hong Kong and Fiji and all throughout South America. And it's just your friend group and your family group. It's just a very enjoyable experience to have. We got a guest.
Pancho Lopez, what is that shirt you're wearing? Oh my goodness.
Let me take the.
I'm just saying hi and goodbye. Hi and goodbye.
Yeah,
hey, Pancho, one of our another Florida referee. Good to see you, my man. Yeah, listen, Cisco. When I go to Vegas, one of my most fun times is when I go to the referee meeting. The night before the tournament, I get to just watching the referees interact, seeing their buddies that they haven't seen, for a few months. Everybody coming together in Vegas now. Haylee, obviously, you're still refereeing, but you're also taking on some RDO roles now here in Florida, and obviously out. Talk about what you're going to be doing out in I think in Colorado. You said, right?
Me?
Yeah. What's your next step? Let's talk about Haylee and the next step in what your next step. I know you mentioned going out to be the sort of referee in residence somewhere. You told me, I think.
Oh yeah, Arkansas, not.
Sorry, yes, I'm thinking of ERA, of the Rugby Development Academy, yeah.
So
talk about how that came about. That's another experience that some players out there and referees might not even know that it exists.
Yeah. So Jules McCoy, she I had admired her from afar for years, and she's a coach of the women's national team twice actually. She's just very well respected. One of my favorite people, and she picked me a couple years ago to be out for, to do some scrimmages for some camps. I did that a couple of Januaries in a row, and then I couldn't make it the next year. I recommended Kahlil, I think, and so they really liked Kahlil too. But they're having residency camps this summer. I was supposed to be there like all of June and all of July, but because of COVID, we're pushing it back 2 weeks. So I'll just be there for 6 weeks. And I'm the resident referee coach. So the whole idea was, players and coaches need to understand a referee's perspective, what we're looking for and why. And so I'm just really the team that she's assembled, the team of coaches and former players. It's going to be a great opportunity to get to know better some coaches that I've reffed, that I've never really had real conversations with because I don't talk to coaches very much. And I don't mean that to say I feel like it's very important to to build trust and rapport with coaches because they talk about us. Referees develop a reputation, and you want to have a good reputation and deliver a solid product. Like, people want to know what you're going to deliver when you show up. So I'm excited, and I leave in 5 days. And
awesome.
But also here in Florida, so I guess what they call an alakadoo now. So doing conference calls and organizing our curriculum. And a lot of it is stuff that I learned over in Munster, and just so class over there. And they do everything. So, they don't believe in ARs over there. And that's one thing I'm bringing up to Florida. ARs, radios, nah, y'all. Get it right yourself, okay? Because you're completely alone. You're like, why didn't you take more pictures in Ireland? I'm like, because I was working. I showed up, and it was just me. And, you take whatever touch judge you can get, and then that's it. So, I didn't get too many pictures because I was just like, I'm not going to be that woman who shows up to do a game because they're a little behind us over there in that regard. But I'm not asking someone. I met a couple of famous people like, oh, did you get pictures? No, that's embarrassing. So it was.
I think I was going to ask you about the Ireland trip, and that, obviously one of the great things you brought back, and I think that's one of the positive things we'll get out of this quarantine, is that the use of teleconferencing and Zoom and being able to get everybody together. Because in a big state like Florida, where we can be 5 hours apart between say Miami and Jacksonville, this obviously technology existed, but people didn't really sort of embrace it till now, and you've really taken it and used it to increase the level of the refereeing in Florida. So talk a bit about that and how you brought that back from Ireland.
Yeah, so they don't have enough referees in Munster, just like we don't have enough referees here. And I was part of a bit of a recruiting drive over there, and I think we got 8 people. Wait, no, I think we got 10 people to show up at our thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we were supposed to have 2 in a row, but 2 back to back. But we didn't have enough participation in South Munster. So like Waterford and Cork down there and Kerry, they have they play most of their games on Saturdays. And so in Limerick we have a lot of schools. So and let me tell you, those schools games are intense. I did every game I did was competitive. I can't think, there was maybe 2 games. My women's AIL game, and there was a scrimmage where it wasn't decided by 1 score. So it was so high pressure, and I loved every minute of it. And I just wanted to bring back that, the independence that we have to have as referees. You have to be able to sort it out yourself, because, all this talk about ARs and stuff. Well, most of us don't have that luxury, and everybody has to be prepared and fit enough to make the calls themselves. And over there, there's still men in their 50s, like doing AIL matches. So it's pretty ageist around here, but over yonder, they'll people are, trusted and competent, and they'll not say take what they can get, but I mean, if you've been around and you've earned that game, then you get it, So it was a great experience, and it was kind of like learning how to ref all over again, because you have to build that trust and rapport, just starting from zero. So it was a great experience, and I hope I can be a good influence on Florida back here. Hopefully, make some people interested in joining us.
No, we're up to a good start already. I've actually had two decent players that have emailed me over the last few weeks and said they wanted to get into refereeing. Obviously, things are kind of on hold with the whole USA Rugby situation. We're not even going to deal with that today. But let's get finally to Kahlil here. Kahlil, talk about if I'm a player or coach or just a rugby guy thinking about getting into refereeing, why would you promote this as a way to stay in the game?
I think being a referee, you can be in a team sport without necessarily being on a team. So you're in the middle of the field, you're all by yourself for that hour and a half. But then, as the others have said, every referee has been where you are, even if they haven't done that particular game. And so no matter the situation, no matter the ups and downs, you can always pick up the phone, call, whatever, and someone has your back. As a referee, we all have been all over this country just to blow a whistle. We've been to other countries that I'm sure we would never have gone to. Just, again, to blow a whistle. You can still stay active in the game. You get to still stay fit. You still have a relationship with players and coaches and fans, sort of. Some of my favorite people I've met because of refereeing. I've rubbed shoulders with some players who, if I was allowed to be a fanboy, I totally would have been, but I have to keep it professional. I'd like to tell them what to do for the next 80 minutes. But it's opened so many doors to things and places where I would never have dreamed 15 years ago that I would have been today.
Obviously, you're the only one of our four guests today that are married. Now, talk about having a supportive spouse, and I know the other three of you all have some very supportive families, whether it be Lex's mom Sherry or Cisco's dad, and Haylee. Obviously, you worked for your family for a while, and they obviously allowed you to travel. And could talk about how important it is to have that supportive structure as a referee, because you are gone quite a bit when that season goes.
Yeah, I would say having a supportive spouse is more important than having a supportive referee group or referee coach or society or players liking you or any of that stuff, because they only have to deal with you for an hour and a half, maybe a full day, and then that's it. But then you would have to deal with the fallout from missing that day for the whole rest of the week. So having someone who understands what this means for you, whatever your aspirations are in rugby, whether it's local or international, having someone who understands that Saturdays kind of don't talk to me. Sundays, you can talk to me a little bit. I'm trying to recover. Monday through Thursday, we can hang out a little bit, but then Friday, I'm right back into Saturday mode. But they still love you, and they're still there for you. And if you have the worst game of your career, they're with you. If you have the best game of your career, they're with you. My wife only sort of understands rugby. She knows what a scrum and a lineout are, but beyond that, it's touch and go. But she's still there for me. If I'm gone for a weekend, if I'm gone for a week, if I leave 4 weekends of every month, she's still there. It's absolutely pivotal. I've heard stories of referees and coaches who they want to pursue this because they love this thing, but then they don't have the support at home from their girlfriend, wife, whoever. And then it becomes this weird decision, this person who I have to kind of see every day, or this thing that I absolutely love. And to not have to make that decision is a huge load off my back.
No, for sure. It's one of those things that isn't really talked about, but it makes a big difference. Now, obviously, we've got four of you on here, four referees from the state of Florida, which isn't particularly known for being an epic rugby state, especially in the production of quality, national. We've had our share of national championships, but people seem to forget. Whether it's Tampa, Boca have been in the mix. Obviously, UCF went back to back on the college side of things. But I want to find out how we've got these four elite refs, and I'm going to bring in somebody now who can perhaps explain that to us, how this has happened, how we managed to have these 4 elite Florida refs, and that we're going to have Jerry Fitzgerald on the line here. Jerry, can you hear me?
I certainly can, Ross.
Well, thanks for joining us, mate. Obviously, appreciate you giving us your time this evening. So, yeah, go around the room here and just sort of talk about, what part you played in these referees' development, and how you feel. How has Florida done this over the years?
Well, Terry Day and I were sort of out on a limb, and we didn't have many referees. A man I love and miss dearly, but we sort of struggled in the early days, back in mid-90s, when I first arrived here. And we did our best to recruit. We would talk to anybody and everybody about rugby whenever we could. Obviously, we wanted to get as many referees as we could, because we couldn't cover all the games we had even back then. And we went on a lot of recruiting drives. We were lucky in the fact that youth rugby took off here.
Yes.
And there was a lot of young fellas who knew the selling point to them was that you're not going to make it as a top-level player, but you could as a top-level referee. And those 4 wonderful people you have on there today were part of the fruit of our effort to bring. I'm so proud of you 4. You're bloody marvelous, a whole lot of you. Really are. I mean, you've done Florida so proud. You've traveled the world. You're all at a really high level. Every time I see a game on the TV and you guys are in the middle, I am so proud. I'm like an old fart who loves all 4 of you dearly.
For those that don't know, Jerry Fitzgerald was part of the referee association here in Florida and assigned the referees for years, and obviously was working in the development of these 4. Jerry, is there something that you saw in these 4, either any of them individually or just as a group, that you saw that sort of made you think they could get to this level? And what does it take to be a great referee?
Well, I'll do my damnedest not to embarrass you guys. Haylee, I won't mention anything. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Anyway, you when you're running a class and the guys are in the class, or the girls, guys and girls, you've no idea what they're going to be like on the field. It's not until you go to their first game. And even in the very first game, when we're all nervous as hell, and we know we're going to make lots of mistakes, you look at them and you think, he's got it, she's got it. And you can just tell it's a natural ability that sort of people have. I mean, Lex had never played the game, yet he took to this like a duck to water. He's really good at it. Also, you need a personality to be a referee. And all 4 of you certainly have a great personality. Even your dad, Cisco, he's got enough personality for everybody. But, I mean, in Lex's case, his mum pestered me he was about 12 or 13, and she was saying, I want him to referee. I was hesitant to make him to let him come on the referee's course, because we didn't have any games of sort of youth and young people that he could go and referee. And I thought, I can't throw him into the fray with these old buggers in sort of Miami and Trident and Boca and Fort Lauderdale. They would eat him alive. He was too young, and I didn't know how he would do with it. But he proved me wrong, totally wrong. Absolutely brilliant. Cisco, oh my God, his dad made him come to every course I ran. In the end, he was good enough to teach the courses, because he was certainly fed up hearing my old stories. Kahlil smells great. Always did. But Kahlil, he took to it again, because the man I've never seen anybody as fit. He lollops around the field, yet he's there before the players. He is so fast, it's unbelievable. But his ability to read the game and understand people and and empathize with where they're going. All four of you have all of those traits and qualities, but you have to be able to do that. And even when you're having a bad game, as you all know, we all have bad games, you can get out of it by having respect for the players, admitting your mistake, and saying, hey, we all make mistakes. Haylee, I love you. You're a cracker. And your mum's a great girl, too. Say hi to you. I'm just so proud of what you did, Haylee. I mean, you followed in Laura Lockett's footsteps, and then Dana Teagarden, who to me is a great person. I love Dana. She and I have had a few drunken nights in Ybor City, but we had a good time, and she's a hell of a referee. All four of you are a hell of a referee. I don't know what else to say to you. I love you, and I love watching your career and following on. And I do keep tabs on you all. I just wish Terry was here to see how you guys have progressed, because he was the man behind the scenes. He knew everything, and he was absolutely a wonderful mentor to all of us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'd like to go around the room and just, obviously, without referee coaches, without. Go ahead, Jerry.
Sorry, Ross. I didn't want to exclude you. You're the damn fine referee too.
No, thanks. Listen, but without referee coaches and development officers, we're not going to be able to develop referees. And I think the fact that Haylee's, obviously the rest of these three have gone out around the country, which I don't blame them for doing. But Haylee stuck around and she's committed to developing the next group of Florida referees. Haylee, just talk about how much we can't have referees without development and coaches, and how much that's meant to you over there, especially Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have people around you that your family, unless they're rugby people, they're not going to understand. They're like, why do you do this to yourself? Why do you train so much? Why are you like doing, with your food and with your sleep? And why are you so uptight? And why are you practicing your faces on the ergometer? Most people don't understand. But I don't know. I just you have to have that support, like Kahlil was saying about having a good mate who's there for you no matter what. I mean, I told Jerry this, like, he always told me I was a good egg, and like my thinking at the beginning was, well, these people know stuff. I didn't know anything. I knew enough to know I didn't know anything. But I was like, they know stuff and they think I could be good. I believe them. So I'm going to prove it to myself that they're right, if that makes sense. So if you have people around you that expect to see you do well, that expect you to, blow through whatever potential you thought you had and like be like, wow, I thought I hit my ceiling and then, I crashed through another one and another one. And if you don't have that support, and if you don't have that encouragement, if you don't have a coach who's really positive with you, Terry Haas, like game changer for like all of us, right? You have to believe in yourself. Ultimately, like it's your own courage and your own self-belief that keeps you going out there, because there's times when, like you said, you're having a bad game and you're 60 minutes in and there's something you didn't sort out and you're like, 20 more minutes. This will be the longest 20 minutes of my life. At the end of the day, like it's a game, and you do everything you can to give what you can to that game, because the coaches and players are putting in probably twice as much work as we are. And we have to remember that and respect that. So I just want to make reffing seem cool here in Florida, and hopefully this is part of that. Thank you for organizing this. And I just want more people to just give it a go, because it's really, really fun, and you surprise yourself when you're like, wow, I did this thing, but you can't do it without the people supporting you on the way up. It's just no way.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, looking at those photos, of Cisco, Cisco, one thing I noticed in those photos that Charlie sort of posted is that, you're on the sideline, you're with there was always some 2 or 3 coaches around you and support staff, and talk about what the rugby family sort of means to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was saying earlier, like I think it's one of the things that really drives me to keep coming back, because there's sometimes where you have like a really hard game, or you start getting burnt out because players have 7s and 15 season. For a lot of us, whether or not we're 7s or 15s focused, we'll go sort of the whole year through. And what really keeps you coming back to everything and pushing through everything is really like all the people you get to see and just the belief that they have in you, right? Especially like Haylee was saying, with all of the mentors that you have. I mean, everybody in Florida when I started, right? Because I was 16 when I first started reffing. Almost literally everybody was a mentor to me. And so that was something that I'd never experienced that before in my entire life. And it's, one of the things that I remember very fondly of being in Florida. Of like, I knew, I just felt taken care of, I felt like I had like a family of people to talk to if I had something to talk about, or if I ever, I'm just hanging out in the ref tent, like I can talk about whatever. It doesn't have to be just about rugby. And yeah, I think refereeing for me as well, like it helped me grow as a person. Like before I started refereeing, I was not as extroverted or as sort of speak my opinion, assertive and stuff as I am now. And it's because being a referee sort of forces you to really bring all of those parts out of yourself. And I would not be the person that I am today without refereeing, and I wouldn't be the referee that I am today without the people who pushed me and believed in me of everything. I mean, I remember one of the first times, like my dad had told me, because my dad was a high level track and field runner, right? He was national champion of 400 meter hurdles for Mexico back in the day. And so he knew what it took to be at a high level and the commitment and stuff, and just having something in you. And he was one of the first people too. So to speak about not just rugby family, but like my family in rugby, he was also for real one of the first people to say, Cisco, if you commit yourself to this, like you could really be, you could go far, and the same thing with Haylee, of like, I want to prove that to myself. I want to see myself as the person that the people that I hold dear to me see me. So yeah, I mean, for me, rugby is family. Like there's nothing that I just would not be the person that I am without this sport, without all these people. So,
no, greatest sport in the world. There's no doubt about it. Kahlil, somebody that I know has worked at, for one of the biggest corporations in the world. So talk about how refereeing has helped you, at the corporate level and just in general, as a human being.
So you have to learn very quickly humility if you don't already know it, because no matter how good I have been in my mind, when I look back, I was worse last year, and then next year I'm going to look back and I'm bad this year. But then on the field, you're going to say you're going to have a scrum. It's funky. You have no idea what's going on. You have an eagle on this side, a different eagle on this side, and who you're going to tell you're wrong when they know way more about this thing than you ever will. So you have to learn humility. I think you also have to be able to set a goal and remember why you're trying to reach that goal, because we're all going to have those games where you wonder, why am I even doing this? And maybe it's not a game, maybe it's just a whole season where you think, I've hit a roadblock, I've hit that ceiling that Haylee hasn't busted through yet. And if you can remember why you're doing this, whether it's to be the best version of yourself, the best in the state, the best in the country, whatever, it'll help you kind of push through those hard yards. So be humble, remember your why, and then learn to trust in others, because even though none of these other three will be making the calls while I'm making the calls, if I need some sage advice, I can go to any one of these three people, plus any dozens more throughout the country. And I might not want to hear what they have to say, but I know that whatever they do say, they'll have my best interest in mind. I think this game just makes you a better person. At least being a referee makes you a better person. We're already good people, but even better somehow.
No, for sure. Now, Lex, as we mentioned earlier, you don't come from a rugby background, so being a referee sort of your first sort of part of being a rugby team per se. What has this game meant to you? Obviously, living in New York in these crazy times, it's one, obviously one of the toughest places to live at the moment. And how is rugby? We all want to get back out there on the field, but yeah, what is rugby really meant to you? Somebody again who didn't grow up playing the game and a different route than most others.
Yeah, and what we've all touched on so far throughout the call is it's brought me to places and cities that, especially domestically, I've never thought I would find the best coffee shop or find the best restaurant, and especially where you have other referee friends that live in those respective cities who could, have passion in their respective places and say, oh, I want to bring these people here because it's the best place to go to if you're visiting for 1 week out of a 4-month season. So, taking that a step further with what we're all going through right now, where we have the ability to have Zoom calls or once a week, twice a week, every other week, whatever it may be, that I think the rugby community has done well, depending on, where you are and how, you've wanted to enhance your refereeing or just, catch up. I know Rugby Canada has, a weekly just, hello call where they do trivia once a week. So that's nothing rugby related. It's just, hey, how are you doing? Let's play some trivia. I know Richard Every has been putting on every other week or every week, different sessions about different aspects of the game that's keeping you engaged and, keeping on, learning throughout the challenging times when we do get back on the field. We'll still have, a good impact on not having refereed for a significant period of time. And then lastly, with the technology we have nowadays, it's so easy to be able to just call, FaceTime, text any of your friends just to check in and see how they're doing, because I haven't seen Cisco, Haylee, Kahlil, Jerry, besides all the Facebook messages he sends me every single day, and Ross in quite some time, where the ability to reconnect with people right now has been an all-time high, and that's something that we could just take on, moving forward, where we have the ability to reconnect with people and connect with people that are going through challenging times, or even not, where there's still some great things that are happening this year that people are forgetting of. That there's some of my closest friends in the rugby community that are doing great things that people might not really think of, because it's such a tough time to always communicate with people throughout this whole entire situation. So
yep.
The rugby community is just very welcoming, and I know that, especially when the four of us were starting as referees in Florida, Jerry was very inviting in multiple ways possible, on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever it may be. He always found a way to include everybody, players, coaches, referees, whatever it may be. That, and that's just the type of people we are, I think. And we all have different backgrounds, different perspective on lives, but we're all people who, at the end of the day, love the sport of rugby, which obviously for me has taken a different path than most people. But everybody has at the core that same passion for the game, and it's just an integral part of how the game evolves and how the community takes shape.
No, for sure. I think one thing the one bright spot that really may come out of this quarantine is just the use of rugby at the grassroots level, using technology for things like this, for videotaping games, and for referees to be able to go back and look at their games. I know we've had coaches join us, on our sort of bi-weekly referee calls, get their point of view. If you don't see them in person, obviously rugby is an in-person sport, and the social aspect of it is huge. But I think if we can take this time to referees, I'm sure you guys have been watching videos of your matches more than ever. Coaches will have been doing the same thing. I just think hopefully in the end it turns into a greater level of rugby across the board. Jerry Fitzgerald, I'll give you the final word on these four before we wrap things up.
Well, I consider you guys my 4 baby referees. But every referee I've ever trained, I consider my baby referees. You guys are the cream of the crop. You've gone way, way far higher than I ever thought was possible back in the day in the USA. Look at Lex now. He's refereeing professional rugby. If you make a mistake at that level, you're costing people money. There's a lot of pressure on you. Who the hell would have ever thought we were reaching these heights, guys? Well done. I love you. Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you four and Jerry taking the time to join us this evening on Talking Florida Rugby occasionally. We'll definitely try to get this going again. We're going to try and get some of the referees from around the state to join us. Those that haven't reached these quite levels, but those that have been refereeing for quite a while, perhaps give us their opinion on things here at the state level. And we'll definitely have Haylee back on to give us her opinion on that. Obviously, next weekend, next Sunday, we'll have hopefully Kerry O'Malley and Evan Haig from Florida Rugby Union. So if you have any questions for them, we'd love to hear them on Facebook or via email or text. You know how to get in touch with me. And if you'd like to help us out financially, I'd love to turn this into an audio podcast at some point so everybody can listen in while they're driving, etc., on the way to work. Hopefully everybody's getting back to work these days. You can see there, Charlie posted rugbyfl.com/GoFundMe. Anything you can help out with would be great, as we can get this out to as many people as possible. But Lex, Cisco, Kahlil, Haylee, and Jerry, and obviously Charlie behind the scenes, we appreciate you all for coming and joining us tonight. Everybody that's listening or watching and commenting. I see some funny comments there that Charlie didn't post. Most of them about Cisco's hair, which we have to ask about. Cisco, what's going on here?
Yeah. So it was just a minor thing that I decided to do. I figured, we don't have any rugby. It's like a quarantine thing, right? Just like do something crazy here. So yeah, I decided let's just see what an early 2000s blonde look would look like, and I've grown it out with
the 70s mustache to go with it.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, the mustache has been a thing for a while now when I'm not doing rugby. So now everybody's just saying them both at the same time, and they're like, okay.
He looks like a 70s porn star.
Just following in his dad's footsteps, Jerry. We saw Kai Martinovich. We saw Kai Martinovich posting there as one of the new and up and coming Florida referees, getting some opportunities on the 7th Circuit already. He's only been reffing a couple of years. He's one of the guys to keep an eye on. But yeah, we'll see you next Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, with Kerry O'Malley and Evan Haig from Florida Rugby Union. If you have any questions, I know some of you have questions for those two, so get them in if you can. And again, Lex, Cisco, Haylee, Kahlil, Jerry, and obviously Charlie behind the scenes. We appreciate you guys for coming and joining us tonight, and we'll see you down the road somewhere. Cheers.
Thanks, Ross.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Yay, it's over. Yay, it's over. Woo-hoo. We made it. We did it. Thanks. That was fun.
You can end that broadcast, Charlie.